Hello and welcome back to the Now We Know Show, the show where we discuss a topic of interest and by the end we will have learnt something new and hopefully you will too. I'm Zach.
I'm Buzz.
And I'm Jack.
And in this episode we're going to be discussing creativity versus politics. And in this special guest episode of the Now We Know Show, it gives me the greatest of pleasures to welcome an acting legend who has appeared in more productions than I've had hot dinners and is a British sci-fi icon, the one, the only, Brian Croucher.
Hey.
Big round of applause. Hiya, Brian.
Hello, good day to all you millions who are tuned in to this podcast. I say hello and welcome.
Well,
listen and you will receive some honey and some sweet words.
We need to add that to the intro.
Yeah, we'll have to add that in. Well, talking about the people who are listening, we do have quite a wide range of countries that people are listening in.
Yes. We've had listeners from the UK, the United States, New Zealand, Ireland, the Netherlands, Canada and Sweden.
Right, so I think for our international listeners, maybe we should put into perspective who Brian exactly is. I mean, I don't think there's anybody in the UK that... I think you'd be very hard pushed to find anybody in the UK who hasn't watched a production that's got Brian Croucher in it.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of people without any taste whatsoever see me on television in many productions.
Yeah.
Playing, I did play a priest once, but most times I'm a bent and twisted person, i.e. a policeman, well, of course, a gangster, but, most people are bent and twisted and corrupted in some sort of way, but we have to play them, we play, as actors, we play murderers, rapists, priests, architects, grandfathers, et al.
Yeah, and probably accountants as well.
Oh yeah, and some big accountants as well.
Politicians.
Thank God for big accountants.
So maybe we're just going to start off by a quick reminiscing over how things we've seen you in, Brian. I mean, for me, I go back to the 70s and unforgettable character of Borg in Robots of Death.
Robots of Death, where I was
Doctor
in
Who.
a silly costume with over made up. Mascara.
But it had a really iconic scene in there where I think you're the only person that I can remember that has slapped the jelly babies out of Tom Baker's hand.
I did indeed. I was asked to do that by the script writer. He wrote it down. Borg knocks the jelly babies out of Doctor Who's hands. So when it's written in the script, you have to do it.
I like the fact it said knocked, and it was a right good old slap. It was brilliant.
Well,
Shut up!
Shut up! And going on from that, of course, there's other things such as obviously in Hammer House of Horror, the house that bled to death.
One of my personal favourites.
Yeah, Jack's seen that. He's seen you in that one. Last Days of Pompeii, where you played a gladiator, didn't you?
I played a gladiator number 4. His name was Melior. I was only in episode 1 because I retired, and I retired with a bag of gold and a wife. And the director caught me smiling once. He said, "Gladiators don't smile." I said, "Yes, but I've got away with my life. A bag of gold." And he said, "Don't smile." Oh, okay, you're always right. You're the director.
Okay, but inside you were smiling.
Oh yes. I was anticipating. She was quite a beauty that I was given.
And of course, you cannot escape us from bringing up Blake Seven and the iconic character of Space Commander Travis.
Oh, yes.
Commander Travis 2. I was 2. There were about 6 Tarzans. I was the second Travis.
Second Travis. I always felt that Space Commander Travis, when it came to villains in sci-fi, has kind of been overlooked. I mean, and by that I mean, if you think about the ones that come straight to mind, like Darth Vader.
Yeah.
He uses the dark side of the Force. They build a Death Star. He wants to take over star systems. Then you've got Commander Travis, who single-handedly, and I mean single-handedly because you only had one arm, the other one was cybernetic, orchestrated the whole invasion force to invade the galaxy, literally to take over everything,
Well, coming up behind me very fast was Ozzy Osbourne. He had all the dark arts, although he was up in Birmingham at the time, and I think he never left Birmingham. Who knows?
Oh.
But yes, you know.
I think I saw him on the news. Didn't he just do a surprise guest appearance at the Commonwealth Games when they were doing
Yeah, and he's been in space for many years.
and maybe just to round off on that before we start chatting about creativity versus politics, of course, there's EastEnders, where you played Ted Hills.
I did. I played Ted Hills.
And
they ran to the hills
and
to the sound of music.
And that's one thing we kind of all got in common in the studio today.
Yes, very true.
Because we've all been in EastEnders.
In some capacity, we've all been in EastEnders.
Yeah. I mean, I'm usually the old guy holding up the bar in the Queen Vic.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm usually chatting people up in the gay bar.
They seem to have typecast you.
Yeah, I seem to always get that role for some reason.
Yeah, Jack's always in the gay bar.
I'm always walking around in some kind of capacity.
Yes. So EastEnders. There you go.
At the end of it, we just see the back of my head.
If you remember, I too had a gay son. Well, he was a little bit bi, but I mean, I had a shoplifter for a daughter and a shirtlifter for a son.
Now, I think that's probably going to bring us straight
Shall
into.
we stop there?
I think this is going to bring us into the creativity versus politics subject. Do you want to kick us off with this, Brian?
You want me to kick off?
Yeah.
Well, I suppose censorship comes to mind worldwide in many different countries. But look, I'll start off with acting classes. Acting classes, you start off with an empty space. You put Brian Croucher in the middle, who happens to be, well, I don't happen to be, I've been a socialist all my life, but I can play working class Tories. But it doesn't mean to say I believe in Toryism, conserve. I believe in generosity, in sharing. That's socialism. But the Conservatives of this country want to stop sharing. I.e., Richie Sunak the other day said, we'll give money more so to commercial ideas in terms of students, but not the arts, not culture. Well, unfortunately, every country in the world, the earth, the world, needs culture. They need
definitely.
Stories so they can be educated to do this or to do that, and to make a choice. But of course, there are some countries, namely possibly Russia, China, North Korea, who censor.
Yeah.
That is, they censor the arts, what's said and what's shown. So I rest my case.
Well, personally, I've seen this coming in, even in our society now. We get more and more censorship things that appear, say, for example, before watching a movie.
Yeah. Mostly on streaming services.
Mostly on streaming services. You mentioned one, didn't you, Jack?
Yeah, so I went to watch a film called The Last Samurai, starring Tom Cruise, which only came out in 2003, so less than 20 years ago. And it didn't have a description for the film or the cast or anything. All it said was, this film may contain offensive, outdated views. And I just thought that was a little bit... It deterred me from watching the film because it didn't tell me anything about the film. All it told me was that I should be offended.
You're going to get offended by it.
Almost says what they think is more important.
Yeah.
They're making decisions for
I mean, it's a 2.5 hour film. And there's...
Carry on, Brian.
It's pretty woke.
Yeah.
But then again, that's history. Look, years and years ago, I was at the Royal Court Theatre in London, in Chelsea, in Sloane Square, and I was in a play called Saved. Well, just before the production of Saved, there was someone called the Lord Chamberlain, and he was, thank God, censored and got rid of. And a good example was pre the Lord Chamberlain. The Lord Chamberlain used to censor everything, all plays, all screenplays, any swearing, any nudity, anything a little bit untoward, he would get rid of. But pre that, there was the famous play, the Kitchen Sink play, Look Back in Anger, where there's a character called Jimmy Porter, who's a working class lad who gets involved with a middle class girl, but he's a bit angry. but he never swears. The F word never comes into it. He never calls her an effing bitch or anything like that, because the Lord Chamberlain got rid of it all and destroyed his character.
Right.
So there was censorship for a start. We got rid of censorship, but it's still there. It's still sort of in the background, because it depends on the producers what play, what film they want to produce. They hold the cards.
Yeah, and I suppose it all comes down to viewership and money, and I mean, back in the 80s...
Well, no, Pete, it comes down to education, how you educate people.
Right, because I remember back in the 80s, you used to get a lot of TV shows which were really quite, they were very forward for their time. I mean, things like The Young Ones, etc., which were written, I think, partially Ben Elton had something to do with it. And Ben Elton, as a writer, used to be really quite outspoken on politics and all sorts of things. But I think that kind of approach to writing now would probably be stomped on quite quickly.
Well, I mean, nowadays you can say all sorts of words, the F word, the C word, you could talk about anything and everything. So it depends where censorship starts and finishes, and why it starts and why it finishes politically.
And so how does that compare, going back to when you first started learning your craft, and you must have, I remember you saying to me about you did your boot camp. Where was that? It was in our holiday resort, wasn't it?
Oh, Butlins.
Yeah, Butlins, that's it. And
yes, I was a red coat at Butlins, an entertainer.
So it must have been far less, more open for what you could do back then, with people taking less offence over things, I would imagine.
Well, it was okay then, but then it got to a stage where it wasn't okay, and now it's got to a strange area where most things are not okay, and that's called woke, and I suppose that's comedy. Jim Davidson wouldn't have a career, would he now?
No, Jim Davidson, Freddie Starr. They would probably just wouldn't even get a look in, would they?
Freddie Starr, yeah, none of them, no. But overall, there is a control factor in censorship, which I'm not sure that is right or wrong. I've never quite known which way. The barometer is in the middle and goes, 40%, 60%, and 50%. But really, in terms of the Earth, the worldwide thing, there are so many. I mean, look at sport, for instance. There were so many countries that were competing in the Commonwealth Games that didn't believe homosexuality should exist in their countries.
Yeah, I mean that again is far more controversial in those countries these days, whereas in our society it's just become the norm, which it should be.
Yeah.
It's just everyday thing. I don't understand why people are still quite medieval in their viewpoints these days.
Medieval, right? We know about you at medieval.
Yeah, we're not going to that.
I see you in suits and armour.
Oh, I do like wearing armour. Maybe not in the temperatures we've been having recently in the UK, but yeah.
Good conditioning.
Yeah, but although it does do, as Zach said, it's good conditioning for the heat. Carry on.
Discussion and argument, well, not argument, analysis goes all over the place, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, now there is woke. I mean, there were comedians who wouldn't go anywhere near Bernard Manning, namely the young ones. They didn't do Bernard Manning jokes, or the two that we mentioned earlier. But nowadays drama touches on all sorts of stuff, which was frowned upon. Well, which is frowned upon. I mean, I was just listening to the radio, and this man Jones in America, who Donald Trump followed, and Nigel Farage, they both followed him, and he lied about the Sandy Hook I mean, he was censoring the idea.
Oh, yes,
that
this is the
both children and teachers were shocked.
Yeah, this is the chap that was recently in the news. For those people listening who don't maybe have not caught it, they should have done because it's been an international news story. But he was the conspiracy theorist chap, isn't he, who basically said that the Sandy Hook school shootings were just made up. They were staged.
Alex Jones, his name was.
It was Alex
Well,
Jones.
that's political and censorious in its right there, you know. I mean, people, for their own particular wants, they change the deck chairs on the Titanic. They move it about a bit, the subject matter, and you know, it's terrible that these people not exist. I don't want them killed. I don't want them put in a gas chamber, but it's terrible that they've got these ideas when there are certain facts, or facts that we wouldn't go along with of theirs. There are certain facts. There are pictures. There are witnesses. There are survivors.
But isn't that part of the because of obviously we've got social media these days, which you know I didn't have when I was growing up at all. But social media, so many people. I mean, I think there was a bulletin on the news, a little news feature where it said that most teenagers these days get all their news literally from social media, from Instagram,
Yes,
from Facebook.
we very much live in the age of misinformation.
And they just grab these little sound bites. And I do remember seeing on the news a teenager who was being interviewed, and she said that what's the point in buying newspapers? What's the point in looking at different news channels on the television when, and in her words, the telephone knows everything.
He's behind that telephone.
Yeah, and that's the problem, because it's the people behind the telephone.
They're trying to convey a message.
Listen, this is real time. I've got to open the door for the postman.
Oh no, you go for it.
Oh, he's going to photograph the gun that's just arrived from America.
Oh, it was a bomb.
A bomb?
Oh no,
Thank you,
it's a
Tony.
boom. Does your dog bite?
See you
That's a
tomorrow.
reference to...
That's a reference to
Yeah.
Pink Panther. So you got a bit of a Pink Panther thing going on there, Brian.
A what?
Pink Panther sketch going on there. Is this a boom? Is this your boom?
Yeah. Boom, yeah. So what was I going to say? No, social media is electric poison, isn't it?
Oh gosh, yes.
That's actually a really nice way
That
of putting it.
is a lovely way of putting it. Electric poison.
Anti-social media as
Yeah,
well.
anti-social media. There's a chap that we've worked on different movies who... Jeremy, that's it. And that's it. He calls it anti-social media.
Well, it can be, but I mean, there's one thing. When Facebook first came out, I censored it in as much that I didn't want to know what colour toilet paper people used that morning.
Well,
I hope it
and
wasn't
then
used.
people having an argument. I think the blue toilet paper is much thicker than the pink. Oh, where do you get yours? I get mine in Lidl. Oh, I never go to Lidl.
Yeah.
I go to Waitrose. Oh, I can't afford to go to Waitrose. Oh, shut up. Get off.
Next you'll be mentioning which way you hang the toilet roll.
Oh, that's a big one.
That's a big one, that one.
Oh, yeah, that's a big one. Yeah.
That would
I
cause some
suppose
division.
that banter and tittle-tattle and all of that goes into what we're doing now, really.
Yes.
But we're serious folk, we are.
Oh, very serious, yeah. We know where we're at, yeah. So with social media, and going back to the conspiracy theory thing, the problem is you get characters like that, and people don't realise they're actually making millions out of people following them, and the more that they put out this
the more publicity they get,
disinformation,
That's
and
what
the
it's
more
all about.
publicity they get,
The
they're
more-
making money.
The more poo that they invent, yeah.
Yeah, then they make money off it. I mean, could anybody remember how much that chap was fined in court?
Well, I'm not sure. I know he's got a big following though.
Yeah, but it was several $1 million, wasn't it? But then afterwards they were just saying he'll just put a call out to all his followers
Yeah, exactly.
and say,
And
"Can you
they'll
donate
fund
money?"
Yeah.
And that's what they'll do.
He'll be back up to it.
Yeah,
Jeez.
Well, it comes round to the pound note. That's why they can't stop people going on Instagram, Facebook, and all of that, because people are going on there to make money, and that's where that's where the politics, it comes right round to politics, control, the dollar, the pound note, the euro, it comes to that. And if people would forget about that a little bit and get on with their spiritual and soulful lives, then we'd all be in a better place.
I mean, certainly when it comes to creativity, you really shouldn't stifle it. I mean, that's part of a basic human ethics. We even from the dawn of man, we've sat around fires and been told stories because that's part of who we are.
Yeah.
Some of us have been held over fires, you know.
What, for telling stories?
Censorship, does that have like a detrimental effect on creativity?
For young writers and young creators,
Yeah.
Is censorship damaging their potential?
Well, I think it does. I think written in the correct way, there is a subtle way of writing a scene about sexual intercourse. You could just see that it happens between individuals. You don't need to show it. There's going back one stage to torture. You could show the fire. You could show the person naked, and you can intimate that torture did happen in the early centuries. So you're not censoring it in one way. You're modifying it.
Yeah, but I do find, being an amateur historian myself, I do find that when you get a lot of the historical TV dramas, I know there's a kind of difference here, isn't there? With TV dramas and period dramas.
Costume dramas.
Yeah, costume dramas. They can be different, but when they're meant to be depicting actual historical events, I do find that they change them quite a lot these days, or try and water them down.
Yeah.
They
Make
clean
them
them
more
up a bit.
acceptable.
Yeah, there was a movie, I don't know if you've seen it, a movie that came out recently, Brian, and it was called The Northman. Have you seen that one or heard of it?
I've seen it. I've caught a few of the Viking ones. The one I did like was the comedy one, saying, why didn't you come on the last voyage with us? Well, I had to look after the goats, didn't I? All that. I forget what that one was called. What's that called?
Norseman?
Yeah,
Norseman.
Northman or Northmen.
Norseman.
Yeah, Norseman.
Yeah.
I think I caught a couple of little bits of
Why
that.
are you holding my wife's hand? Well, because we've fallen in love. Oh, well, where does that leave me? Well, it leaves you in that tent over there, and I'm in this tent with your wife over here.
Well, that's Vikings for you. But I mean, when it came to the Northman coming out, that's got quite it was hit quite hard for being
by the critics.
By the critics for being over masculine. But when I watched it, it was a really good, as far as I was concerned, from a historical perspective, it was a really good representation of what you would assume life was like back in the Viking period. But
the one I did see, Pete, was the one about England when the Danes came over. There's a Danish guy playing the lead. It's this happy land or something. This land of ours or something. But my wife was watching it. And because she's a bit like yourself, she has to study history, being an illustrator. And she said, "This is all kosher stuff." Historically,
they got it spot on, yeah.
Yeah. Kosher is a Jewish word for good stuff.
Yeah. So and that's the thing. But increasingly, more people are getting kind of offended by seeing things, and so they keep changing stuff to soften it when it comes to history.
Well, I always find that the clothing and the visages are all a bit they're all a bit cleaned up.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah, I mean, being on set on different movies, you can get some wonderful costumes, and they're dirtied up, they're grubbied up. It looks like you've been.
Yeah, they call that breakdown.
Yeah, they've broken the costumes down.
They get broken down. Yeah.
And then you get other productions where everybody looks so clean,
squeaky clean. Yeah.
this is
brand new.
Well,
All the teeth are
look at
perfect.
Peter O'Toole and Richard Burton in Beckett.
Were they clean or dirty?
Well, in real life, they were really dirty. But, apparently, I never met them, but but they were clean. It was that sort of period of there was Spartacus as well. They were all a bit clean, weren't they?
Yeah.
Going way back.
I'm Spartacus.
I'm Spartacus.
I'm Spartacus.
I'm not Spartacus. I don't want to be crucified.
No,
Wait, what?
You're Melior.
I'm Melior, yeah.
That's it.
I've got the bag of
Good
gold.
old Melior and his wench. Am I allowed to say wench? See, that's what I mean.
What's that lion coming towards me?
See, that's it. I mean, I just said, you had your wench, and then you suddenly stop and think, should I say the word wench
maybe we
these
should
days, or am
censor
I going to offend somebody?
Yeah. I had my wedge and my wench.
Your wedge and your wench, yeah. Loads of money. As Harry Enfield would say, loads of money.
Loads of money. Yeah. Oh well, yeah, no, but it does make you think, where censorship and where censorship is and where it's not, and where it should be and where it isn't.
I mean, do you think that censorship, as it's been sort of, I know you used to do a lot of stage pantomimes, didn't you?
Yes, I still do if offered.
Oh, great.
If anyone's in Kent is offering me a pantomime, I'm still available.
Yes, Brian is still available. Contact his agent now. He wants to do more pantomimes. But the reason I bring up the pantomimes is because pantomimes in the UK and England have always been famous for being really quite rude for the adults in the audience, but it goes over the head of most of the children that are seeing the silliness of the pantomime. But I've been led to believe that recently they've been coming down on that. Is that correct?
They've been cleaned up, yeah.
And do you think that is, because of course that's censorship, do you think that is taken away from that tradition?
Well, you're asking me something. I mean, I like the double entendres. I like the subtext. I mean, I played the Emperor of China once, and Aladdin had to rush on stage, and his first line to me was, "Have you got prawn balls?" And my reply was, "No, it's just the way I walk." Well, I'm not sure if the kids would have got that one.
No, I'm sure they wouldn't. That's the point. But it is funny.
Yeah, we're all laughing.
We're all laughing here. But to me, it seems strange and quite odd that somebody would then. They might put what they call triggers on things, trigger warnings, and saying this pantomime might kill.
The serious play that I was in once, some years ago, at the Royal Court was a play about Reginald John Christie, the mass murderer, and I played a police constable, and it was a limerick, and I was digging in the garden for more bodies, and I was digging in the garden, and the limerick came out something like this: "There was a young man from Tashkent whose cock was horribly bent. To get over the trouble, he stuffs it in double, and instead of coming, he went."
Well, again, that is an adult limerick, which we're laughing at. We've got to be honest, we're laughing at. But there's other people nowadays that would be terribly offended.
Oh, yeah.
You can't have that.
You can't have that.
Terribly outdated.
I mean, is that kind of humour, that kind of almost carry on humour?
Are we losing that?
Are we losing
I think it's already gone.
Are we losing the ability? I mean, have we gone too far with that censorship? I mean, is it really that offensive, or are there places where you should still be able to express yourself in that way?
Well, it comes then to what's good and what's bad. If you're a bad person, then you should be censored, you should be put in prison, you should be laughed at, you should shouted at. Some people might actually say you should be hung. But if you're a good person, it doesn't really come into it, does it? You don't need to be censored because you're an angel. You're a card-carrying Labour person. No, it comes down to what's good and what's bad, and how we look at what's bad, and how we educate the bad out of society.
Well, I think that's the eternal battle, isn't it? Really, in human society, is to try and sort of get that balance, isn't it?
Well, what does money bring you? Money brings you corruption and all sorts. It brings you bottles of wine that cost £5,000 each. It gets you an Alfa Romeo, and it also gets you cool girls. Well, none of us want our daughters or even our sons to be in the cool girl, cool boy, rent boy business, because it's not very nice. So, money actually is the root of all evil.
Well, as
That's
I
what
say,
my father told me.
money corrupts, doesn't it? But
Yeah.
But then that's but you see this again.
So then it goes back to. I'm sorry to interrupt.
No,
Pete.
no,
Then it
problem.
goes back to socialism and sharing. If we all shared a little bit more instead of trying to conserve and enjoyed ourselves, we wouldn't be in this climate change that we're in now.
Well, that's the problem, isn't it? I mean, overall, the capitalist society, that the way it's built around us is all about selling the product, selling the dream,
Consuming.
consume. There's a conspiracy.
Absolutely.
There's a conspiracy theory that we intend to do a podcast on, which is called the Great Reset. And part of that, they use a terminology says that you will own nothing and be happy. And what is behind that is that ultimately they're trying to push for a society. Supposedly, this is trying to push for a society where you don't buy. You rent your house, you lease your car, you obviously pay your subscriptions for your
Streaming services.
Internet, yeah.
everything that you have, you don't actually own. But the great they are making money from you by you're continually consuming.
Yeah, as long as you
products.
keep paying for it, you can have it.
As long as you keep paying for it, they don't want you to own anything.
Well,
Pay to live.
it's your birthright. You're born owning nothing.
But isn't that ultimately, well, for me anyway, that's kind of, I mean, you know me, Brian, you've often seen me on my Instagram posts. I'm in the forest here, I'm sitting here and just enjoying nature. I'm happiest when I actually have got the most basic things around me. I think that happiness can be found in less.
Yeah, but your bushcraft shelter. If I came along and said, "Oh, hi, Pete, can I sit in there with you and just watch the bats?"
Yep.
You'd say, "By all means, Brian."
Well, of course, you'd be welcome. I'd get a coffee.
You're
on for you.
welcome. There's room. Yeah, if you've got the time and the inclination, boom, boom, boom. Yeah.
Or you say, that'll be £10, please, for an hour.
Damn, I'm missing a trick there. I'm too generous, aren't I? It's Brian Croucher, right? That's 50 quid.
That's something I was going to say. This podcast will cost you all a tenner each.
Right. So, where do you see the sort of censorship going? Do you see the censorship in politics? Is it on a slippery slope, or do you think that there's a chance to pull this kind of censorship and woke censorship back?
Well, I think we should censor the Conservative Party in this country because they've taken us to a terrible, terrible place. I know they, and of course I'm going to bring that dirty word that some people might say, Brexit, into play now. I'm going to play that card now. But I know the pandemic and the Ukrainian war was not of the Conservative Party's making or Boris's making, but I mean, they've taken us to a terrible, terrible place. Our country is on its knees, and it should be functioning in a much more generous way. There are, something I heard the other day, a warm bank, as opposed to a food bank, it will be places where you can go to get warm because you can't afford the heating in your house.
Isn't that called the local library?
Well, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I say that I don't mean to. Cinemas cost you money, but I don't mean to jest. It's just they do say that a lot of people in the winter do go off to the local library because it's warm.
That's interesting because you bring up libraries. That's another form of censorship on books now. You're getting censorship warnings.
Oh yeah.
Oh, the trigger warnings on books.
Yeah.
Or even some books are just being stopped from being published in this country now because they might contain outdated
Views and opinions. Yeah.
Or even when they're published into the library, that some libraries won't accept. Well, of course, there are other libraries. This is a form of censorship as well. They've shut down libraries before they shut down other places, and that is cultural censorship.
Well, yeah.
We need culture.
Yeah, there's an awful lot of people that have campaigned to try and keep their local libraries open. because obviously the local authorities are strapped for cash, and so I suppose they have to see what amenities they can afford to invest in and what ones they just need to cut.
Well, there you come back to cash control conservatives. You know, it all comes back to that in the end. Whether people say, "Oh, I'm not political," well, you are political, but by virtue of the fact that you are living.
Yes,
because
I mean,
it's being done to you.
I mean, the one thing that everybody has a right to, well, in this country, I mean, obviously in most countries, but the more you look at voting in other countries, then it probably gets more and more rigged, or they don't get a right at all. But if we just stick with the UK for the moment, that is the one thing that you do as an individual have. You know, you have the right to vote, and if you don't vote, then I think that's
You don't get.
Yes, it's a big.
Yeah.
There's that kind of is very disappointing when you hear people saying, "Yeah, well, I'm not voting," because when you don't vote, what they say is if you abstain, you can't complain. It's kind of it's throwing away that one thing that you have.
You know, on the other hand, people say I'm not racist. Well, we're all racist. There are some people that I love to be amongst, but then there are other people who I don't like to be amongst. But they're more individuals as opposed to a race.
Yeah, I was going to say, doesn't that come down to more like we all have our own prejudices against people around us? You know, there's people, as you say, people you don't want to mix with, there's people you do want to mix with, and that's dependent on maybe the lifestyle that they lead, things like that, and the type of people.
That's up to
People
them.
who go
That's their
past you
choice.
in a fast car at 60 miles an hour in a 30 mile an hour limit.
Exactly.
You know, you want them to keep going.
Yeah, whereas when you speak, I've always found this quite curious because we speak of race. It's on the news every day: race, racism, race this, race that. Ultimately, though, when you actually look at that word, the human race is only one race. There aren't separate races. We are all human beings of the one race. So technically, people aren't being. You can't actually.
But then
carry on.
you come back to the colour bar. Years ago, there was a colour bar that there were white people censoring black people, saying no dogs, no Irish, no.
Oh, I
no
agree.
blacks.
I agree. But that's more than being racist, because the black people that have a dark colour skin, or people who are different ethnicity, like Irish, that's being prejudiced against those individuals for a certain feature. But although we use the word racism, you can only be racist against another race if there is actually another race to be racist against. But we're all one human community. I think the thing is, if people could see us, if people could start accepting everybody as being, we're all one big family. That
we're all one team.
We're all one team. We are the crew of Spaceship Earth, and we need to
your
work
theorem
together.
has been solved.
So,
QED, quadrat et demonstratum, Pete.
yep. If we could all, if we could. Carry on. If we could all be one family and see that this fragile spaceship Earth that we live on needs to be looked after, then the world would be a far better place.
I think so, and I think we all agree in that. But there are people listening who may not agree.
Well, it goes back to what you were saying, Brian, about politics and money, because of course they tend to be, unfortunately, some of the overriding factors. If people can make money out of something, they will make money out of it.
Obsession with greed, you know.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's sold to people every day of the week, isn't it? Obsession with.
People collect incredibly strange things, but if you're in the middle of a forest fire and it all goes, you're still the same person with all those 2,000 matchboxes that you collected years ago and cheese labels. They all got up in smoke. You're still the same person.
Exactly. Well, human nature seems to. I mean, I have to forgive myself. I own a Dalek, a full-size Dalek. You see, and I love collecting the odd bits and pieces. Being a weapons instructor who teaches medieval swordsmanship, I own an awful lot of medieval items and things. But you surround yourself with things that you like. But as you say, at the end of the day, if it all went up in a puff of smoke, the thing that you're left with is yourself.
What have you got to show for it?
Let's put it this way again. If I came to you and said, "Listen, Pete, I need a broadsword, have you got one? And you say, I would expect you would say, yes, I've got one. There's this special one here. And I say, could I borrow it? I'm making a film about blah, 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 about this family, and their late ancestor was a great broad swordsman.
Mm-hmm.
And you'd say, well, of course.
Of course, Brian.
And then,
Yes.
then there'd be a price on it. No.
For you, Brian, there is not a price.
No, but you would share, you see, whereas some people would never share.
Yeah.
You know, they buy pictures or they buy diamonds and they put them in a safe in Hatton Garden, never to be seen again.
Yeah, that part of human nature does intrigue me and also puzzle me, in that people can spend fortunes on things that money would, just a fraction of it sometimes, would make such a difference to other people's lives, but they'll buy an item.
Glacier water.
You know,
that's thousands for a glass.
And they'll buy an item, a painting or something, and as you say, it will just go in a private collection in a safe somewhere, never to be seen again. And
well, I've got a friend who the short part of this story is he had a hair transplant, which cost him a few £1,000s. He went to another country to have it done, but then his little dog got sick, and he had to have the dog scanned, and it cost him a few thousand to have the dog scanned. The dog never woke up because they said the spine has a problem. Don't wake him up, let him go.
Oh,
well, you know, he said, it cost me thousands to have this dog scanned. I said, well, if you'd have not had your hair transplant, you could have paid for that.
Yeah, well, there's individual priorities, isn't it? You know.
Yeah, you come back.
I'm more than happy to be driving around in my old second-hand car, because I find that it does the job, gets me from A to B. It's a reliable wagon, but I would never go out and choose to buy a brand new Mercedes at however many hundreds of thousands of pounds.
Be scared to scratch it.
I'll be scared to scratch.
Well, people have multiple cars that they use for different occasions.
Yeah, no. You know,
I've never bought a new car in my whole life. The closest I got was when I was in EastEnders, and I had a few bob, and I'd read about these new cars that were a combination of a Merc, a Jag, a BMW, blah blah blah, called a Lexus.
Oh yes.
And I was driving to Boreham Wood once, and there was this second-hand Lexus on sale, and I needed and I stopped in my old car, and I said, and I made a deal with the guy, and I phoned my wife and I said, I've just bought a brand new second-hand Lexus, and I've had Lexuses ever since, only because I think they're great cars, and they're great. I mean, the last two I bought were 2,500 each. I state that to the taxman, but they were, and they're just such sophisticated cars. But I don't know where I'm going with this, but I've never bought a new car.
Yeah, that's the thing.
But if you buy the right car in the market, you can get great deals.
Exactly. You know, I mean, we've got a couple of Hondas, and we do a lot of, you know, going back to my bushcrafting and outdoor pursuits. I need a 4x4 because I'm off tracking over fields and things. We are Hondas. They've always been reliable. You know, it's great, but I would never consider buying a brand new one, because I think it's kind of inside myself as an individual. It seems to be so extravagant to fork out that kind of money.
Mm.
Yeah.
Whereas buying a second-hand car is very much like recycling, if you like.
Yeah, absolutely. Unfortunately, none of us can help the climate change. We can't buy heat pumps. We can't buy electric cars. We can't put solar panels on the roof. So we've sort of, in a inverted way, censored ourselves. We haven't got the thousands that we need to help to backtrack,
to make the difference.
Our way, just get us out of what we've got ourselves into with coal fires, petrol engines, etc., etc.
Well, to be talking about the global climate change, I mean the UK. I think you check the figures on this. I think anybody who's listening to this can check it and let me know if I've got this wrong. But I think for the whole of Great Britain, we add about 4% of the world's global carbon footprint to the atmosphere. That's 4%. So even in the UK, if we could turn everything round and go literally carbon neutral, each and every one of us went to carbon neutral and did our bit, if we could afford it, because like you say, Brian, it costs a lot of money
Down to money again,
to get to that position. But if we could do it and we could stop adding that 4% to the global carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, it wouldn't make a jot of difference globally, because China are building more and more coal-fired power stations. So are India, Russia. They're belching out stuff left, right,
They
and
don't
centre.
really have any intention of.
They have no
They
intention.
have no intention, because they've said you in the West have had your industrial revolution. We should be allowed to have ours, and the whole of India runs off of coal. So we're on a hiding to nothing, I think, at the moment.
I know. I mean, in terms of a pound note, I've bought a load of logs, and log fires are worse than petrol. Apparently, my log burner, I've got a lovely log burner, but instead of paying hundreds and thousands out for electricity or gas, I'm going to make sure that there's a log fire burning 24 hours a day in my house.
Well, I've got to admit, we're exactly the same in our cottage. We've invested in a log burner, so we're not burning gas anymore, because we're all gas central heating, and we had that installed last winter, and it worked really well. And so it's I don't know where, but of course most people now in modern houses that are getting built wouldn't even have the facility.
No chimneys.
They've got no chimney.
Or fake chimney.
Yeah, they wouldn't have the facility for those. They are literally tied into, you've got to have gas or electric central heating, because that's all you're going to have.
That's part of the house.
Yeah,
part of the house.
I know. The censorship, politics, control, and that comes down to money as well. If they want to control the climate change, we haven't got the money to censor ourselves.
So when it comes to the subject material of creativity versus politics, where do you see it going?
I personally would do anything and play anything if I thought it was instructional, educating. I go back to, if you're playing a character, you're playing as an actor, you're playing Hitler. Well, you can't censor your performance. You've got to kill as many Jews, homosexuals, gypsies as possible to be the real Hitler. You can't portray a soft Hitler.
Well,
Nobody
that's the
ever
thing.
has.
Yeah. So that's the saying. Those who forget history are doomed to repeat it.
Yeah, so
You
I
heard
mean,
that?
if you're playing a historical character, that's where it's written in, and you're doing it an injustice if you try and
Alter it.
Yeah.
alter it.
Change the personality. Yeah.
Sorry, on a sort of smaller scale, we've talked a lot about in the past about how on streaming services now they're sort of actually changing how films are presented to you.
Yeah, it's
older-
secret censoring, you could call it.
Older films, they're kind of cutting scenes out and altering lines and things to make it more PC.
Yeah,
in
I've noticed
quotations.
that. And that in itself is a kind of a censorship that I don't think a lot of people realise they're being subjected to.
Because they
Yeah.
don't know.
Because if you watch an older movie that has certain ideas or certain scenes, certain attitudes being presented,
Views, yeah.
and then you go and watch it and you go, hang on a minute,
It's missing a bit.
it's missing a bit. Something's been taken out of this.
If you've seen the full version.
If you've seen the full version, but then you're on a streaming service and you've never seen it before, somebody in an office somewhere is making decisions on what they think you should be allowed to see.
On a 50-year-old film.
But you don't know that that's happened because you've not seen it before.
Yeah.
And
It's the same on TV.
It's very interesting. We've changed the word from politics to censorship. We're not talking about politics. We're talking about censorship, which is quite interesting. And I mean, I go back to a writer gets an idea, and he goes to a producer, and the producer commissions him. He writes the idea. The producer then validates it by getting a director or gets some money from an influencer who wants to put money in it, and then they have to get a director. And then the director says, I don't know the 22-year-old one-legged Chinaman in England who could a casting director. So then the casting director comes into play, so that it's being censored along the way, and then the casting director gives it to you, and you get a censorship of what the writer. You're the one-legged Chinaman, and then you're asked to play a two-legged Chinaman with just one ear. So it's being censored along the way.
Yeah, I see where you're coming from. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's interesting that we've changed politics to censorship.
We did touch on the politics side as well.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, politics in itself every day censors.
Yeah,
It uses censorship in order
It has
to
a point of view.
into only allowing the general public X amount of information that it wants people to know. I suppose maybe it's becoming a lost skill, but the individual person has got to somehow wade their way through all of this mass of information, fake and false information.
In America had a point of view, and he made millions out of it. He was allowed to make millions for that station that he had that program on. So there's censorship in being negative about things, saying we can't have that, and there's censorship saying, oh yeah, let's have that because we can make money out of it. So censorship works both ways.
Yeah, I mean, okay, if I come right up to if you look at the censorship that they're getting in Russia at the moment, I mean, the amount of weird stories that
It's unbelievable.
That the Russian propaganda machine is telling the actual everyday Russian citizen. And then when you hear what they're being told, you're thinking, this is absolutely crazy. Yet an average Russian citizen may well be there going, yes, we're helping the Ukrainians. We're sending them food parcels, We're trying to liberate them from their Nazi overlords.
The power of information.
The average Russian would say, you're talking a lot of bunkum, Pete, by saying that we're saying all the and that we're having this told to us. No, that's not been happening as far as we're concerned, what you're telling us. So,
it's certainly a very big subject to deal with in the world.
Very worrying subject.
Very worrying subject at this present time, yeah.
As long as censorship is on the tip of our tongue and in the front of our brains, that's the best we can do.
Yeah. And that's very wise words. Perhaps we should sort of round off with.
Yes.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah. You've got 6 questions for me, have you?
Yes, you've preempted my next. We have a little section which we call the 6-shot quickfire questions. Are you happy for me to hit you with these, Brian?
Yeah.
We always ask all our special guests a series of questions. It's a bit light-hearted moment.
I've got no comment.
Okay.
No comment.
If you don't want to answer one, if you don't want to answer one, you just say pass.
Yeah.
Or no comment.
Or no comment. Right. Are you ready for this, Brian?
Yes.
Right. Okay. Question 1. What has been your favourite character to play?
Well, I did play a character called Chris Cottle in a series called Out, 6-part series called Frank Ross is Out, and I've been asked many times in my career to play bad people, but Chris Cottle, in essence, was a good person. He looked after Frank's wife and child whilst he was in prison. So it was exhilarating playing a good person. Chris Cottle in Out.
Right, Chris Cottle, yeah. Question 2. What's your most memorable on-screen moment?
On screen.
Yes, something that when you've been there, whatever the production was, and you thought, that was brilliant.
Being not memorable, brilliant.
Well, memorable in that
I don't think I've ever been brilliant, Pete. I don't. I've yet to be brilliant. Some people say their performances were brilliant, or think they were brilliant. I've never heard anybody say I was brilliant in that.
So memorable. So is there something in your career that you think, I really enjoyed? It might have been a very small thing, but you've said, I really enjoyed that. You've remembered it as being an outstanding moment.
Well, let's say my whole career as an actor has been an outstanding moment for me personally, because I've enjoyed 99% of it.
Oh, well, we've enjoyed being entertained by your career
Yes,
as
you're
well.
fantastic, Brian.
It's been brilliant. Anyway, moving on. Let's go for question number 3. If you could visit any period in time, which period would it be?
Well, if you go back, there was a lot of hardship. You know, if you were a shepherd, you never had central heating, did you? Then you had 6 kids, a wife, and all the sheep in one little hut in the middle of a field. So I wouldn't want to go back.
Okay, well, you can choose to go to the future if you want.
No, I don't want to go into the future. No, I mean, who would want to go and live on Mars? Oh dear. Who would want to be?
We're actually going to be doing a podcast on that.
Do you want to be cooped up in a spaceship? A claustrophobia, here I come. No, I'm quite happy being where I am.
Right, so
It's a good answer.
it's the modern Elizabethan age then. There we go. Question 4. If you could meet up with anyone, living or dead, from history, and have a conversation over dinner, who would you choose?
I've always said I quite like Wedgwood Ben, the Labour MP. What's his name? Hilary Ben's father. But I'd like a few other people around as well.
Okay, we can be a dinner party. If you want to add some people in,
That's cool.
we can have a dinner party.
I like a dinner party with Boris, what's his name?
Karloff.
The Johnsonian, the big bully blonde boy, and Wedgwood Ben, myself, Hitler and Winston Churchill. Yeah, that would be good.
That would get very heated, yeah.
That would get very
There'd
heated.
be a lot of buns flying across the table.
I definitely think censorship in politics would come in on that one. Question 5. Question 5. What's your all-time favourite movie?
I do quite like The Deer Hunter because it talks about friendship, love, war. Quite an Irish stew, really.
And it's Robert De Niro. You can't get it wrong.
Ukrainians. Were they Ukrainians? I think they were lived in the Middle West. And yeah, I do like the Deer Hunter. And of course, I just think that I call him, never met him, Bobby De Niro is one of our greatest all-time actors presently.
Yeah. Well, you can also have him at your dinner if you like.
Oh, yeah. No, he fall asleep.
Right, final question, Brian. Final question. You ready?
Yeah.
Right. If you could come back as any animal, which animal would you choose?
You know what I say, Pete?
I
You know
do.
what I'm going to say?
I do.
You got to say it for me.
It wouldn't be an otter by any chance, would it?
By any chance? God, you should have put money on that, Pete.
Yeah, I know you love otters.
I love being in water. I really do. I mean, I was a lifeguard at Butlins. I don't like going in the sea though, but I like swimming pools. Since I was a kid, swimming pools. I was a lifeguard at Butlins, and I go 3 times to our local spa. The gym. I don't go to the gym because I can't lift weights anymore. I don't smoke anymore. Yeah. That was a very subtle joke there, Pete. Lift weights.
Lift weights.
Players' weights.
Oh, as in
Medium
the
strength.
Oh yes, as in the cigarettes.
Yeah.
Yeah, gotcha.
Yeah.
I've just got the boys.
Yeah.
The boys are looking at me and they're puzzled at the moment.
Yeah.
Different generation,
Well,
you see.
I'll leave you with hey diddly dee, an octa's life for me. Splash, splash, splish, splosh, here I go again. Hey diddly dee. I'm going now.
Okay, Brian. It's been absolutely fantastic having you on the Now We Know show. Thank you so much. Would you come back again?
I'll come back again. We can talk about. Well, we'll have to think about that, won't we?
Yeah, we'll figure that one out. But yeah, we would love to have you back on the show at a future date.
Thank you.
All right, Pete.
Okay, you take care,
hopefully
Brian.
See you at a convention or even on set.
Well, you never know. If you need a hand at a convention, give us a bell. I'm always there.
All right, mate.
All right, my friend.
Love you.
You take care,
Bye-bye
Brian,
now.
and thank you so much.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
You're a
you,
star.
Brian.
Bye for now.
See ya.
Bye.
Bye.
Well, that was brilliant, wasn't it?
Yes,
You know,
absolutely.
Fantastic.
I loved that. That was brilliant.
Yeah, it's so good to have Brian on the show. I've known him for a few years now, and I was really pleased that he approached us and asked if he could come on the show. So
A very fascinating topic to actually talk about.
Oh,
we tackled some big subjects, but
Yeah.
hopefully you realise that we're...
It was in a controlled manner.
Yes.
At
I
least.
mean, you can't avoid being heavy at times.
Yeah.
And controversial at times, but that's what it's about.
Exactly.
It's the Now We Know show, and hopefully we've learnt a
yeah,
few things, chewed the cud, as I
Yes.
like to call it.
If you enjoyed this podcast, please like and subscribe to this channel and comment below any suggestions of topics or activities you'd like to listen to in future episodes.
So that's a big gore blimey gov. EastEnders goodbye from Buzz.
That's a big Cygnus Alpha goodbye from Jack.
And it's a big shut up! Goodbye from Zach.
You just knocked my jelly babies everywhere.
Oh, a simple no would have sufficed.
Now we
know show. Now we know show. Now we know show. Now we know show.
Now we know.
Now we know show. Now we know show. Now we know show. Now we know show.
Now we know.
show.